Welcome to the late edition of MLS Matchweek review, as I am doing this on Monday once again instead of the usual Sunday. And after I review all 12 of these games, I am going to do the preview for the midweek games, and there's going to be 4 midweek games this week. And tomorrow I will be doing a special transfer window deadline day special where I'm going to take a look at all the moves that has happened in the past week, right up to the point where the primary transfer window of MLS will be closing. And there obviously has been a lot of big moves that has happened, and I will probably even mention it a couple of those moves as we get into the review. But that being said, let's get to our first game, which is the Battle of the Bomb Feeder. And believe it or not, this was actually a very fun game between the Rapids versus Vancouver. I mean, despite the fact that both of these teams are near the bottom of the Western Conference, both of these teams kind of put on a bit of a show. But Vancouver, of course, took an early lead in the 60th minute. Freddie Montero scores from Las Bengora, and I put bad defending Soderberg because, yeah, that was really bad defending by Axel Soderberg. Like, when the ball was played through to Montero by Las Bengora, Soderberg tried to intercept the ball. He missed the interception, and he basically let Montero go through on goal. And then 10 minutes later, Veneto scores his first goal from Montero and Donnell Henry. And again, I put bad defending again by Soderberg because once again, Soderberg decided to do a sloppy, lazy kind of defensive play by just making a silly sliding challenge that he didn't even need to do because Montero was near the flank area, and because of that, he let Montero through on goal again. He basically passed it back to Veneto, who basically tapped it in for the 2-0 lead. And I know I'm kind of single out Axel Soderberg in this game of how he was just being very bad, and the fact that the Colorado defense has been just god awful in the last couple of weeks, but it's kind of the truth. I mean, I would say he probably is the worst defender of that team. I mean, you know, him and Keegan Rosenberry, they have been kind of an absolute disaster for this Rapids team in terms of the back line. But then Kamara scores on the penalties to make it 2-1 against Vancouver, and it feels like Kamara, for the last couple of goals, it has all comes from the spot. And remember a couple of weeks ago when I said that, you know, Kai Kamara passing now as the 5th all-time MLS goals scored in the league, and that, you know, I said that, well, you know, he's still scoring goals, but I don't know if he has enough to maybe catch up to where Wando and Landon Donovan is. And after I said that, he kept scoring goals, and right now, I am generally nervous. The fact that Kai Kamara might actually catch Wando and might catch Donovan for that record, and he might, like, with how Wando is doing right now this season and how much he has struggled this season to even get the tying goal. Like, he only need one goal coming into this season, and he still haven't scored that goal. Like, if Kamara can continue to score goals like this, which I think he is like their leading goal scorer right now for the Rapids and is kind of right up there in terms of the Golden Boot race, yeah, there's no doubt that Kai Kamara could potentially sneak in, and then it's not really Wando watch anymore. It's more like Kai Kamara watch. And speaking of Kai Kamara, he scored again in the second half, and once again scores from the penalty spots to give the Rapids a 2-2 tie after they were down 2-0 in this game. But then, in the 77th minute, Rubio decided to get himself a straight red, and honestly, this was a stupid red card for Rubio. I mean, you know, I get some people will say, well, you know, Donnell Henry kind of touched Rubio's chest, and that, you know, obviously Rubio immediately reacts, and he was not happy of the fact that he kind of touched an opponent. But my thoughts on that is that, you know, first of all, Donnell Henry, he didn't even touch Rubio's face. He just touched his chest and asked him if he's okay. And it's clear that Rubio was frustrated, and he said that, you know, get your hands off of me. And I guess Henry probably realized that, you know, Rubio, he's obviously lost his composure, so he's trying to wind him up a little bit, and before you know it, he decided to slap Donnell Henry in the face, and that is an automatic red card. And I have a feeling that this could be more than just one game by Diego Rubio, because anytime when you decided to put hands to the face of an opponent or decide to slap an opponent like that, that usually result in a pretty heavy fine and maybe even an additional game of suspension. And this is what, like the 99th time this season for the Rapids that they have not finished with 11 men. Like between them and their Rocky Mountain neighbor RSL, they probably have the most red cards so far this season. It seemed like every single game they all obviously have some stupid kind of sending off happen in games, and that it happens once again here. And because of this red card, this kind of really thrown away their chance to potentially win the game, and Vancouver basically took advantage of this red card. Now, they looked like they immediately took advantage of that red card 4 minutes after Rubio got sent off when Las Bengora scores, but they went to VAR and they said that Andy Rose, as the ball was coming in, he was in an offside position, so that goal of course was called back. But Rose of course redeemed himself after of course was being in offside position earlier, and of course, get as a result of that being a disallowed goal, he of course redeemed himself 6 minutes later by scoring the winning goal for Vancouver, and that is the final score of this game, as Vancouver able to win a 5-goal thriller between them and the Rapids. And in terms of the shots in this game, the Rapids had 16 shots compared to 9 that Vancouver has. Both teams had 4 shots on goal, 7 shots off target compared to 4 that Vancouver has. 5 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that Vancouver has. Possession-wise, it was dead even between both of these teams. And, you know, for Vancouver, they'll be happy the fact that they win this game, although they'll be a little bit disappointing the fact that they conceded those penalty, and disappointed the fact that they were 2-0 up in this game and looked very comfortable, and then just some sloppy defensive play gave Colorado the chance to come back into this game. But still, they got all 3 points on the road. And as for the Rapids, that's now 10 games without a win, and this winless run just continues for the Rapids, and that they remain the only team in the league right now that does not have a win. And it seemed like changing a new coach doesn't really help at all, because this performance, it didn't say anything for me that the Rapids really kind of got fired up and that they were ready to work. It seemed more like Anthony Hudson was actually right, the fact that this was a bottom group player, because at times they look very, very lazy, especially in the defensive end. And speaking of defense, once again, the Rapids have conceded 3 goals or more, and I think that's the 4th consecutive game that they have conceded 3 goals or more in a game. But yeah, next up is the Red Bulls. So they won 3-2 against the Galaxy, and I knew coming into this weekend this could potentially be an upset, and I just had a feeling that the Red Bulls are going to win this, because I feel like they are eventually going to figure out, and just like what Atlanta United has done this weekend, they look like they are started to figure it out after a bit of a slow start. And in the first 30 minutes, they look like the Red Bulls team from last season. They started to bring back their identity, which is kind of like a pressing team, and they absolutely suffocate the Galaxy attack. And they were rewarded in the 15th minute when Tarek scored to give them a 1-0 lead. Now, in not 2 minutes, 15 minutes later, there was an offside call, and it was Long that was going through on goal, and he basically scored that goal, and apparently it looked like it was 2-0 against the Red Bulls. But the linesman basically raised his flag as soon as Aaron Long basically scored that goal, and this is after about 3 to 4 seconds after he went through on goal and he was one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And, you know, I understand the fact that referee and linesmen are supposed to put their flag down if they're unsure, so that they can always go back and check on VAR. But I think there's got to be a point where you cannot just delay your raising of your flag 3 to 4 seconds. You know, if you're going to put your flag down, and if you're unsure, then, you know, put your flag down, and then maybe start putting your flag up about 1 or 2 seconds later, and that then we might go to VAR to look at it. But the fact that it took so long in terms of him raising that flag, that was kind of a little bit ridiculous. But, you know, the Galaxy, they actually came back into this game, and, you know, Atuna scores from Zlatan and Polonta, and what a ball this was from Diego Polonta. Diego Polonta in this game had an amazing game, not only as a defender, but also as an attacker, too, with 2 assists in this game. And this was really against the run of play, too, because up to that point, it was all red balls, and then out of nowhere, the Galaxy got the equalizer, and then 4 minutes later, it's Zlatan from Ponez and Polonta, and all of a sudden, this game just basically turned on its heads. Like, the Red Bulls, they dominated the first 35 minutes, and all of a sudden, the Galaxy basically just came back into this game, and all of a sudden, it is now 2-1. Now, in the second half, the Red Bulls did get the equalizer from Jakowski and Connor Lay, and then in the 67th minute, this is where the controversy begins, with Etienne score from Royer and Fernandez. But originally they had to go to VAR because they have to look at whether or not was the goalkeeper interfere when Brian White basically kind of tumbled near the box. Was David Bingham kind of interfere? And I think after looking at, by the way, after they said that goal stand, and after I look at that, I think that's the right call. And I know Galaxy fans and also the fact that people is going to say, well, I'm just kind of biased because I hate the Galaxy. I'm a Quakes fan, and, you know, it's David Bingham, who is also one of the most hated player and kind of a Judas of the Quakes. But I think that was the correct call, because when you look at what David Bingham did, which he basically dived to the wrong way, I think that is the difference between whether this was a goalkeeping interference or not. Because have he dives the right way, have he, like, the ball when Etienne strikes it was on the right side of the post, Bingham basically dives on his left, and that as Brian White was falling down on the ground, he was also falling down on the left. If David Bingham did dive to the left side, then you could definitely make a case that he was interfered, because then there would be contact between Bingham and Brian White. But because of the fact that Bingham dived the wrong way, already played the ball, that's why it's not goalkeeper interference. And again, I know Galaxy fans are not liking the way that is the call, but that's just the reality of how goalkeeper interference works. This was kind of very similar to, I remember last year playoffs when the Red Bulls had a goal disallowed because of a goalkeeping interference that was called goalkeeper interference. But fortunately for them, in this play, it wasn't called, and it was kind of similar, but it wasn't called, and their goal, of course, stand. And that would be your final score of this game, despite the fact that the Galaxy hit the post twice late on in the game. They couldn't able to get that equalizer. And in terms of the shots in this game, lots of shots. 22 shots compared to 14 that the Red Bulls had. 5 shots on goal compared to 7 that the Red Bulls had. 9 shots off target compared to 5 that the Red Bulls had. 8 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that the Red Bulls had. And 62% possession that the Galaxy had compared to 38% possession that the Red Bulls had. So, yeah, this was a very entertaining game, but at the end of the day, the Red Bulls with a huge victory against the Galaxy. And, you know, I don't know if they are really back yet, because, you know, I think they need to still continue to win a couple more games before you can say that the Red Bulls are truly back. But this is a right step of them beating a team that is considered one of the best team in the Western Conference. And as for the Galaxy, you know, it seemed like I'm seeing a trend where the second half seems to be a problem for the Galaxy. For the last couple of games, they have played very poorly in the second half, and the only reason why that they're still winning this game is because Zlatan has kind of bailed them out a couple of times. And it just gets to a point where when you play that poorly in the second half, yeah, you are going to eventually get paid for playing poor in the second half, and this was the case in this game. But that being said, let's move on into the Texas Derby between Houston versus FC Dallas. And this also had some late game controversy too. But in the first half, Minota scores on a penalty. No doubt the fact that this was a penalty, as I believe, I forgot who exactly was the Houston player that brought down, but he basically got clipped in the box. That is clearly unfortunately a penalty, and Manotas, of course, puts it away. And then in the second half, Manotas scores from Rodriguez and Elise, and what a counter-attack this was. And if it was Elise and Manotas, I would be like, yes, that is my favorite connection, and that is the I just love to see that happen whenever the Dynamo go on that kind of counterattack, because that's what their identity is. It's all about the counterattack. It's all about the speed of the wingers that they have, and they prove it again in that goal. So yeah, at that point it was 2-0 against in this Texas derby, and then Dallas started to come back into the game. Baji then make it 2-1 from Barrios and Mosquera, and then late in the game, as we head into the 4th minute of stoppage time, Dallas had a free kick, and as the free kick basically was ticking, Mosquera was able to head that one away, but they look at VAR to see whether or not if that was offside or not. It was offside, and when you look on VAR, it was very close, but Mosquera was just an inch offside, and if it was an inch offside, and even maybe like 3-inch offside, that should be enough in terms of being clear and obvious to be called back, and that exactly is what happened in this game, and Houston survived in this Texas derby. And in terms of the shots in this game, Houston had 16 shots compared to 9 that Dallas had, 4 shots on goal compared to 6 that Dallas had, 8 shots off target compared to 1 that Dallas has, 3 shots block compared to 2 that Dallas has, and Dallas had 64% possession compared to 36% possession that Houston has. And for the Dynamo, yes, they'll be happy that they got another win, but this was a classic example of what happened last year and why they did not make the playoffs. And once again, it seemed like Wilmer Cabrera, he still hasn't learned the mistake of the fact that you do not take off your best attacker in the 75th minute and decided to go conservative and bring your deep mids, because obviously the Dynamo bench is not very, very good, and it's shown once again here when they kind of almost suffer kind of a collapse like they did last season. And if this goal that was not disallowed by Mosquera, I would be talking once again of the fact that this is basically the same old Dynamo from last season where they were 2-0 up, everything was fine, and then in the last 5 minutes, they just completely capitulate. So, yeah, fortunate for them to not do it this time, but you got to think that if you're a Dynamo fan and if you're Wilmer Cabrera, just stop being so conservative in the last 15 minutes. Stop not bring bring off your best attacker in the 75th minute thinking that the game is over, because it's not. The game is not over, and they almost got burned again. And as for Dallas, they definitely played better in this game, but it's clear that they really missed Paxton Pomako. I think if Pomako was in this game, they would have definitely had more threat on the attack. I mean, ever since they did not have Pomako, their attack has looked very, very stale. So, yeah, they desperately want him back, which I think he should be back in the next couple of weeks. And, they're just going to have to shake this loss off and move on into the next game. But that being said, let's move on into the next game, which was TFC. They won 2-0 against Orlando City. And in the first half, there was no score in this game, but Orlando City, they had a lot of shots and a lot of chances in this game. And, tell me if that is something that sounds very familiar to Orlando City fans. The fact that they had tons of shots in the first half and tons of chances, but yet they cannot put in the back of the net. And then in the second half, because of the fact that Orlando City didn't take their chances, they got paid the ultimate price by not doing that, because TFC woke up. Osorio scores from Bradley to make it 1-0 in favor of TFC, and then Chapman scores from Pozuelo to make it 2-0 in favor of TFC, and that is the final score of this game. Shots in this game, Orlando has 18 shots compared to 13 that TFC had, 2 shots on goal compared to 9 that TFC had, 9 shots off target compared to 4 that TFC had, 7 shots blocked compared to none that TFC had, and TFC at 58% possession compared to 42% possession. And like I said about the fact that, tell me, if you're an Orlando City fan, This looks very familiar with the fact that so many chances at home, yet they couldn't capitalize it, and because they didn't capitalize it, they get paid because of the fact that as the game stays 0-0 in a long time, or the fact that they're down in this game and they had a lot of chance to come back, but they couldn't take advantage of it. That is the reason why they lost. And I think this is probably, it seemed like most of the Orlando City game, and I've been saying that Orlando City has been kind of inconsistent, which is kind of true. I mean, at times they look good and at times they look bad. But I think one key things that I have started to witness with Orlando City is that they tend to have tons of shots. Like, they tend to put on a shooting gallery against the opposition goalkeeper, but they just don't put it on target. I mean, 18 shots in this game, only 2 was on goal, and those 2 was actually a good save from TFC, but still, it doesn't matter how many shots that you put, if you do not create some real clear-cut chances, and if you do not make the goalkeeper work, all those shots that you're gonna do does not really matter at the end. And it really doesn't matter if you don't put away those chances too, because at the end of the day, if you don't put the ball into the back of the net, you are not going to win games. So yeah, and for TFC, it's a good bounce back win for them, and I believe this is the first clean sheet that they have in a while. And TFC, their defense, much better in this game, especially the fact that how much they have struggled in terms of defending in the last couple of games. But yeah, next up, NYCFC. So don't look now, but NYCFC is started to climb back up the table and started to look like the NYCFC team that we thought that they would be, because they went on the road against a very hot Montreal team and they beat them 2-0 in that game. In the first half, Maxi Morales scores in the 6 minutes to give NYCFC the 1-0 lead. And then Tajuri Shradi scores for Maxi Morales to make it 2-0. So Maxi Morales, a good game for him, 1 goal and 1 assist. And that is the final score of this game, as NYCFC is now unbeaten in 6 games. Shots in this game, Montreal had 8 shots compared to 13 that NYCFC had. 5 shots on goal compared to none that Montreal has. 6 shots off target compared to 5 that Montreal has. 2 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that Montreal has. And NYCFC had 54% possession compared to 46% possession. And with this win, as I mentioned, the fact that they're unbeaten in 6, I believe now NYCFC has climbed themselves all the way up to 5th place. And I would like to apologize to Domai Turin of the fact that I kind of been abusing him and saying that he should be fired, and the fact that of all the bad starts that NYCFC had suffered in the beginning of the season, that he should be really on the hot seat and close to being in the chopping block. And in fact, ever since that Domai Turns has said that he's on the hot seat, this team has gone unbeaten in 6 games. So something tells me the players, they seems like they actually really care about their coach, and as soon as they heard that their coach could potentially get fired, they started to pick things up, and what do you know? Just like that, they are rising up in the Eastern Conference. And I guess maybe now, if every coach that is in the hot seat, instead of just kind of ridicule your player, just say that you're on the hot seat and maybe players are starting to kind of play for you. I don't know if that actually works for all these coaches right now that is in the hot seat, but it certainly has worked for Domai Turin. And as for Montreal, yes, this is a very frustrating loss, and this is probably one of the worst performances that they had this season. I think their worst performance still is that 7-1 defeat against SKC a couple of weeks ago, but this was right near that because they just didn't do anything on the attacking end, and they lost at home, which is something that it makes it even more painful, the fact that you lose at home. And it is clear that they need PRT back. Like I've been saying, that they've been keeping afloat for so long in terms of squeezing out every single talent that they have on this team, but it's clear that they need PRT back desperately, and we'll see if he would be back soon, because they really need him in terms of the attack. But yeah, next up is the demolition job by the Philadelphia Union. So they absolutely demolished New England. And as much as when you look at the score and it said Philly pretty much dominated the whole game, I think when you look at the first half, I feel like the first half was pretty competitive. I mean, it looked like it was a kind of even game. Jack Elliott, of course, scores from Medunian to give Philly the 1-0 lead. But then Caicedo scores from Castillo, and Caicedo, he's been scoring a couple of goals lately, and he's been started to become that goal scorer that New England really wants from their team. And at that point it was 1-1, and heading to halftime at 1-1, you would think, okay, New England, they're drawing against one of the hottest team in MLS and the team that is leading in the Eastern Conference, and as long as if they can hold on, maybe they can get a point out of Philly, which would definitely be a great result. But little did they know that was not the case, and in fact it was a total implosion by the refs in the second half. Izinho scores from Montero to make it 2-1 in favor of the Union. Then Santos scores from Wagner and Medunian to make it 3-1, and from that point, that's when the capitulation began for the refs and the floodgates just opened for the Union. Santos scores his second goal to make it 3-1 in favor of the Union. Shabelko then joined the party from Bedoya and Izinho to make it 4-1 in favor of or 5-1 at that point. This one actually made it 3-1. Then Santos scored that second goal, made it 4-1. Shabelko, of course, scoring that goal in the 82nd minute, make it 5-1. And then David Accam basically put the cherry on top to make it 6-1 in favor of the Union. And in terms of the shots in this game, this was a shooting gallery that the Union did to New England. 19 shots compared to 16 that the refs had. 15 shots on goal in this game. That must be the most shots on goal that I think any team so far this season has been able to put up. And I really felt bad for Cody Cropper, the New England goalkeeper, after this game, because not only he conceded 6 goals in this game, and usually when your goalkeeper conceded 6 goals, he probably did not have a good game. But I thought Cody Cropper, he did enough he made 9 saves in this game. He kind of stood on his head a couple of times, but because of how bad the New England defense was and how much he had to kind of bail his team out. I mean, this could have been even more ugly if Cody Cropper did not save a couple of those shots. But I really felt bad for him, the fact that he conceded 6 goals, and that at the end of the day, when you look at this, you would think that he had a bad game, but when you look on the box score, he actually saved 9 shots in this game. But the Union had 15 shots on goal compared to the 4 that the refs had. 11 shots off target compared to 2 that the Union has. 1 shot that was blocked compared to the 2 that the Union has. And the Union had 63% possession compared to 37% possession that the refs had. So, for the Union, this game just basically sends a message to the rest of the league and the Eastern Conference that, they are ready to compete. And if I would have told you in the beginning of the season that the Union, with a new system that they're running, and that now they are in the top of the Eastern Conference, especially after 3 weeks and how much of a disaster that the Union were in the first couple of weeks of the season, if I would have told you that they're now in the top of the Eastern Conference and playing some of the most beautiful soccer you have seen in this league, you would definitely think I am just joking, but here we are. That is the reality. And one thing that is not joking is the refs, who are very bad right now. I mean, the refs, 6 goals conceded in this game, 10 goals conceded in the last 2 games, 13 goals conceded in the last 3 games. This defense have just been, I talk about the Rapids have some of the worst defense in the league. The refs seems like they are kind of battling in terms of who can have the worst defense in the league right now. And something tells me, just like last season when we had a couple of teams eclipse the 70 goal conceded mark, it's going to happen again this season with the way that we already seen teams conceded. I think New England has already conceded 25 goals so far this season, and we're only into week number 10. So they are actually now on verge to potentially concede around 75 goals this season. That is how bad things have got with this team. And unfortunately for New England, they got to quickly brush that off because they have a midweek game against the Chicago Fire next. And you know that the Chicago Fire, with them also having a good attack, they definitely want to take a piece of that New England defense that has just been very weak so far this season. But that being said, I have now reviewed all first six games of this week, which means that I am now going to be changing my boards to review the last 6 games of this match week. Okay, so next up, DC. So they won 3-1 against Columbus, but the big story of this game has to be about the controversy in the 24th minute. And for the second week in a row, Ted Unkel is in the center of the referee controversy and also in the center of just fans lashing him out and also coaches lashing him out the fact that he is a god-awful referee. So, you know how last week when Ted Unkel was refereeing the LAFC versus Seattle Sounders game where Rodon, of course, got sent off because apparently it looked like he kind of put hands to the face of Atuesta, and then Atuesta, of course, went down like a sack of potato, and eventually that red card was rescinded because it looked like Rodon was pushed in and his hand accidentally touched Atuesta there. So, yeah, there's that example of why Ted Unkel was he clearly got that call wrong. And once again, in this week, it looked like he got it wrong again because, so what happened in this was that Ted Unkel was like right between where, originally it looked like Will Trapp kind of fouled Acosta there, and that once Trapp basically got the ball, he plays it through, and then I believe it was Santos that scored the goal, and it looked like Columbus has got a 1-0 lead and finally ended that long drought that they have in terms of them scoring a goal in a game. But Ted Unkel basically go to VAR. He looks at it, and I have a feeling something tells me that he knows that he made a mistake and that he knows that he was the reason why Acosta brought down, because it was clear as daylight that Acosta was brought down because of Ted Unkel, and the referee just kind of gets in the way. And, we've seen before where referee, they do get into the play of the field. They try their best to not be in the way, but it happens, okay? It happens where referee unfortunately gets into the play, and then it, of course, sets up in a goal. And the fact that I think something tells me Ted Unkel didn't want to be part of that and didn't want to be the reason why DC went 1-0 down in this game, and probably maybe feeling the heat of Aldi Field and the crowd being absolutely angry, the fact that he is the reason why we conceded the goal in this game. He basically decided that, there's no goal. It looked like Will Trapp basically fouled Acosta, even though it technically, or it's not even technically, if you look on the replay, it is clear as daylight that Ted Unkel basically fouled Acosta in that situation. And as a result, there was no goal. Obviously, Caleb Porter was absolutely fuming after that VAR decision, and even after the game, he absolutely created a rant on the decision, and something tells me he's probably going to get fined by that. And I know Caleb Porter, as we've been saying many times, he is kind of probably the whiniest manager in MLS, but I really think this time he has a point with the fact that this was just a terrible decision. And this is why I've been, last year, I'm not sure if I mentioned this when I was talking about the controversy of Pro, but Pro, they need to, at some point, they need to think about either suspending a referee because of just bad refereeing performance that they had in this game, or not allow them to ref the next game and not allow him to get an assignment, because that's now 2 straight games that Ted Unkel, of course, kind of cost the result of the game. Although I think this one, I know Columbus fans are going to be up in arms in terms of this call, but I really think at the end of the day, even with that call, I didn't think they did enough in terms of potentially at least get a point out of this game. In the last game, I would think that Seattle was hard done by that, because that was a sending off and they were down to 10 men for the rest of the game when they shouldn't be down to 10 men, and it just basically ruined a marquee matchup and a game that would be very, very interesting to see. But yeah, after that, 3 minutes later, Acosta, of course, who of course was fouled by Ted Uncle, scores to make it 1-0 in favor of DC, even though it should have been 1-1 at that point. And then Rooney scores a penalty. Will Trapp, of course, was calling handball. And again, Columbus fans were up in arms with that call. But I think this time, Ted Uncle actually got this call right. When Will Trapp he was basically turning his body, and as his hand kind of leaning toward the ball, yeah, that obviously is going to be a handball. I mean, as long as if you're turning your body and you're leaning toward where the ball is going to be strike and trying to block it with your hand, yeah, that is going to be a handball. So Rooney, of course, puts it away to make it 2-0 in favor of DC. Ariola then scores from Jara to make it 3-0 in favor of DC. Columbus did get one goal back, but they didn't score the own goal. They didn't score the goal. Instead, it was an own goal by Bill Hamid, and this was an absolute goalkeeping howler from Bill Hamid. I mean, the ball was coming in from a corner, and as he was jumping up to trying to get a ball, you would think that's a routine kind of play, but instead, as he was jumping up to trying to get the ball, that ball slipped out of his hand, and it just went into the back of the net. I mean, that is, we talked about this season, there's been a lot of shocking goalkeeping howler. Add that to the list of just shocking goalkeeping howler and some of the worst mistake you have seen so far that goalkeeper has made. But still, the good news for Bill Hamid, his team still won this game, but the bad news is that kind of ruined his clean sheet in this game. And in terms of the shots in this game, DC had 11 shots compared to 12 that Columbus had, 5 shots on goal compared to 2 that Columbus had, 3 shots off target compared to 6 that Columbus had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Columbus had, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that Columbus had in this game. So, again, like I said, I know Columbus fan will be absolutely up in arms because of the refereeing decision, but again, I don't think they did enough in this game. I thought DC were by far the better team in this one, and they of course get all 3 points in this game. That being said, let us move on into the next game, and it's the Ozzy Alonso derby, which ended in a 1-1 draw between Minnesota and Seattle. In the first half, Ike Opara scores from Gregus, and what header that was from Ike Opara, and also what a delivery that was from Gregus from the free kick, and then Opara, of course, puts it into the back of the net to give Minnesota the 1-0 lead. But then Rodon scored an absolute golazo, and Rodon last week he got a red card that was eventually rescinded, and the fact that he wasn't supposed to play in this game, but because of the red card rescinded, he's able to play in this one, and he took advantage of that by scoring an absolute golazo. And you could say that maybe that could be the goal of the week and might be nominated as the goal of the week. That was just an absolute sweet strike that he put in, and that turns out to be the final score of this game, as in the second half there was no score. And in terms of the shots in this game, Minnesota had 12 shots compared to 7 that Seattle has, 3 shots on goal compared to 1 that Seattle has, 6 shots off target compared to 3 that Minnesota had. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked. And in terms of the possession wise, 54% possession for Minnesota and 46% possession for Seattle. And for Minnesota, I know that this is going to be frustrated, the fact that they drop points at home once again. But having said that, Seattle is a very decent team. And one good thing about Minnesota is that they are started to be better in terms of defending. And, in these last couple of weeks, they had got back-to-back clean sheet. And in this game, they only conceded 1 goal in this game. And I just had a feeling that ever since Calvo is not starting with this team, which, by the way, a spoiler to tomorrow's video when I talk about the transfer deadline deals, Calvo actually is now no longer with Minnesota after he got traded to the Chicago Fire. So it seemed like this defense have looked so much better right now. Although at the same time, I think it also is part of the fact that Seattle, it's clear that they are missing some. They definitely need Rui Diaz back in this team, because Jordan Morris right now, after kind of a hot start to the season, he has really cooled off a little bit, and I think it's clear that they really need Rui Diaz back up front as the guy that is, of course, going to score goals. And, overall in this game, they didn't really have a lot of attacking threat in this game. And, Seattle in the last couple of games have definitely struggled in terms of scoring goals. Although I really think that, when you're a team that started so hot in the season, you're going to eventually have some of the part of the season where they're going to kind of struggle in terms of scoring goals, and they might suffer a little bit of bleep. And I think that's what Seattle is right now. And the fact that they're still pretty banged up right now in terms of the injury that they have and the guys that they're currently missing in that starting 11. But that being said, moving on into the next game is Portland. So they won again. That's now 3 straight row wins for the Timbers, and I can tell you that I am pretty sure that the Timbers are going to make the playoffs. With them now having 3 straight row wins, and potentially they could make it 4 wins in a row, because next week they play against Vancouver on the road. And, Vancouver, although they did beat Colorado 3-2, you would think that on the road against Vancouver, Portland, especially how well they've been playing in the last couple of games, they might make it 4 in a row at that point. But even if they don't make it 4 in a row right now, getting 3 in a row so far in this 12-game road trip, after just going through the first part of the road trip just completely winless and just hitting rock bottom, yeah, this team somehow they are climbing themselves back up, and they're actually right near the red line. And actually, in terms of points per game, they actually are going to be above the red line if you were to look at points per game, because they actually are only 1 point behind the Quakes, but they also have a game in hand over the Quakes. So if they can win that game in hand, they would be above the red line. But in this game, in the first half, Blanco scores in the 34th minute to make it 1-0 in favor of Portland. And then in the second half, Sam Johnson scores from Corey Bear and Beasler to make it 1-1. And Sam Johnson had some harsh words after the end of the game, talk about how the fact that, he was very frustrated, the fact that the team, they weren't really moving the ball quick enough. And since he is a very kind of quick player, it seemed like he's frustrated the fact that every time he make those quick run, he always finds himself in an offside position. And I understand, in some way I kind of agree with the fact that, RSL, it seemed like their ball movement in this game was very, very slow, and that, since Sam Johnson is a very fast player, and that, when you have a fast forward like that, you definitely need to release the ball sooner so he can get to that ball when he makes the run so that he doesn't go offside. But having said that, I think Sam Johnson could also maybe think about timing his run better, and that, I know it's the ball movement, he's frustrated with the ball movement with the team and not releasing the ball sooner, but just kind of slow it down a little bit. You don't have to just go full speed ahead in terms of trying to get through on goal and trying to play through the line. So, and it's really all about how you need to just time your run better. That's kind of one thing that I will say about Sam Johnson in terms of his comments about the fact that the team are not being quick enough. And then in the 68th minute, Valeri, of course, give the Timbers the lead back, and with that goal, Valeri now joins the 70-70 club, which means 70 goal and 70 assists. And Valeri, there is no doubt that in the future, he is definitely going to be remembered as one of the best players to ever play MLS, and one of the best creative players that have ever played in this league. And with this goal, he joined another big milestone ever since he come into this league with 70 goals and 70 assists. And congratulations to Diego Valeri for reaching this accomplishment. But that, of course, is your final score of this game. As in terms of the shots in this game, RSL actually had more shots than Portland has. They had 16 shots compared to 7 that Portland has. 7 shots on goal compared to 3 that Portland has. 2 shots off target compared to 4 that Portland has. 7 shots that was blocked compared to none that Portland has. And RSL had 54% possession compared to 46% possession that Portland has. And, RSL, as as I mentioned, of the fact that they just look very slow in terms of their ball movement. It seemed like in the last 15 minutes, they just seems like they kind of got tired out. And I don't understand how are they kind of just getting tired out and run out of ideas and run out of gas when they didn't even play a midweek game. And sure, yes, this game was played in an altitude, and that, RSL, of course, are playing about 4,000 feet above elevation. But if that is the case, then I should see this more often, where RSL does kind of run out of gas late in the game, and RSL usually never run out of gas at the end of the game. So something has to be up with the fitness with this team, and something tells me that I guess it's more just frustration more than, like, it just feels like the team just quit after 75 minutes. And if you're an RSL fan, that has to be very disturbing and just very frustrating. And also, I've been hearing a lot of RSL fan that's been saying that Pecky should be fired from this team, which, yeah, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, because Pecky is my favorite manager, he has definitely not done a very good job with RSL so far. And it just feels like it's get to a point where, RSL always tends to get off to a slow start, but eventually they pick it up. But eventually, when you get off to this mini slow start, yeah, the fans are starting to get on the backs of you, and especially with the way that the performance-wise and the work rate the team has in that game, yeah, there is definitely a case that definitely Mike Pecky is not getting the best out of his player, and something tells me the work rate that he puts in his player is just clearly not there for some reason. But that being said, moving on to the next game, is the Quakes. They won again. It's now 3 in a row that they have won at home. They beat FC Cincinnati by a final score of 1-0, and boy, this was a nerve-wracking game. Like, even though I know FC Cincinnati hasn't scored in what seems like forever, it seemed like they haven't scored since they last play in USL, I was very nervous in the second half. And a lot of that nervousness has to do with the fact that Espinoza basically got sent off in the second half, and we were basically playing down to 10 men for 40 minutes. In the first half, Lima, of course, scores from Espinoza, and really, I thought in the first half, we were very sloppy in terms of going forward on the attack. It really kind of reminds me of the old Quakes team, where going forward, they just missed so many final balls, and also the fact that the crosses was coming in was just not good whatsoever, and it didn't look good whatsoever. But Lima, of course, with a moment of brilliance, to able to score from outside the box. It was also partially deflected, but still, we were up 1-0 at that point, and at that point, we pretty much just dominate the possession. We had 71% possession in the first half. That's probably the most possession we have ever had at home in a long time, and it makes sense because of the fact that FC Cincinnati, even when they were 1-0 down in this game, they were still continue to try to bunker and just kind of trying to hope that maybe they can get a counter attack and maybe they can get a set pieces. And boy, every time when FC Cincinnati has a set piece, it makes me very nervous because I know what they can do in terms of those set pieces. Now, in the second half, as I mentioned, Espinoza, of course, got sending off. And actually, I didn't mention in the first half, the referee, he was very trigger happy in terms of handing out yellow card. Like, I thought he was being very kind of harsh in terms... He wasn't being very lenient in terms of the yellow card. Like, he just... Once he started handing out yellow cards 5 minutes in the game, he didn't stop doing it. He continued to hand out. And I guess some people will say, well, at least he's consistent in terms of handing out yellow cards. But at the same time, I don't like the fact that, referee just need to be so harsh where they just hand out yellow cards every time. And after the first half, knowing that I saw the fact that there's already been 5 yellow cards handed out in the first half, something tells me that in the second half somebody is definitely going to get sent off, and especially the way that the referee is showing no mercy in terms of whenever a player is foul. And sure enough, that was the case when Espinoza, of course, getting sent off. And I know some people say it was a very silly foul by Espinoza, but at the same time, he was already beat, and that if he did not decided to oh god, I forgot who was the FC Cincinnati player that he fouled, but if he did not decided to basically held that FC Cincinnati player down, he would have had an option to either just shoot on goal or even pass to the middle with a dangerous ball in the middle. So I thought Espinoza, that was a professional foul, but that also means the fact that he's going to get a yellow card of that, and he was already on a yellow, and that was the second yellow for him. So he's off for the last 40 minutes, and, you know, like I said, I was very nervous in the last 40 minutes, because in the last 40 minutes, we basically just sat back. Like, we basically were like FC Cincinnati, where we gave FC Cincinnati all the ball, and they can basically try to break us down. And although they didn't really create a lot of chances to try to break us down, there was that one nervy moment right about the 74th minute when the ball was coming in, and Alashe, who is a former Quakes player and the person that scored the first ever goal at Avaya Stadium, he basically hits that one, and I thought that was going in. But Daniel Vega, who, you know, I have really been impressed with Daniel Vega. Like, after what happened in the first couple of weeks where I was being a little bit skeptical, and especially with that howler that he did against LAFC, I didn't think that he was good enough, and that I really kind of want Mark Sitkowski back in this team. But ever since, he has just been incredible, and he has made some big save for us game after game, and in fact he still leads the league in terms of the most saves so far by any goalkeeper right now in the league. So he is just he is basically kind of stood on his heads in most of these games and have single-handedly bailed us out in terms of situation like that. And what a save that was, with him just tip it over the goal. And, you know, if Alashe scored that goal, that would be a very awkward kind of moment, because, you know, I like Alashe. A lot of Quakes fans like Alashe, and knowing what he did with the Quakes and how he was exceptional with the Quakes. And, you know, it's unfortunate that last year with the whole Starhay situation and him falling out with Starhay, and that we kind of had to force to basically send him off to another club. You know, I would really love Alashe to still be in this team, but I understand why we decided to send him to Cincinnati. But yeah, that would be a very, very awkward goal, and I'm guessing Alashe is probably not going to celebrate. Like, I think he'll immediately hold his hand up, and knowing that, yep, he scored against his former club, and I'm not really going to celebrate because of that. And that's just going to add to another list of former Quakes players scoring against us after we decided to let them go. But fortunately, that did not happen, and at the end of the day, we did grab the 1-0 victory. And an interesting thing about this game is that after the game, they actually said that Mateus Almeida didn't even practice in terms of what happened when they go down to 10 men. So in many ways, when we were down to 10 men, it was just like all hands on the pump, and that, you know, we just got to do what we had to do in terms of holding on resort. And I have a feeling after this, maybe Almeida is going to add that into the training session. And I know the training session that Almeida has put into this team, it has been already very intense. Like, they work on a ton of stuff, and I can understand why they still haven't worked in terms of what happened when they are down to 10 men, and what happened when we have to really be conservative and try to hold on to the resort. But credit to the team, able to figure that out on the stretch. And in terms of the shots in this game, the Quakes had 11 shots compared to 12 that FC Cincinnati had. 1 shots on goal compared to 2 that FC Cincinnati has. 7 shots off target compared to 6 that FC Cincinnati has. 3 shots that was blocked in this game by both teams. And in terms of the possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession, and most of this possession has to do with the fact that in the first half it was 71% for the Quakes, and then in the second half it was kind of like 71% for FC Cincinnati, which that is why it kind of balanced out a bit. I mean, when you look at this game, it was just possession wise, it was really a tale of two halves in terms of who actually had the ball in this game. But with this win, as I mentioned with the Portland game, the Quakes are above the red line. And yet, I still don't believe they will make the playoffs. Why? Because Portland is on a tear right now and started to go up the table. And I still feel like it's going to take a couple of more of these kind of resort where it will say that, okay, I really start to be optimistic that the Quakes are going to make the playoffs. I mean, I know they're now unbeaten in 4 games and they've got points in 5 of the 6 games, but I want to see if this can continue, and I want to see that, I know we now finally have an identity in this team and in this man marking system, and I know Almeida looked like he's finally figured out how to get the best out of his team. But the question is, can we continue to do that? And I hope it will continue, because in the next game, we play against New England on the road, and that has to be one of the most easiest road game that we are going to get the whole season, because knowing how New England did this weekend, and knowing also New England has a midweek game this week, and it was on the road, so they're going to be flying. They're actually going to be playing against Chicago, so they won't be flying all the way across the other side of the country, but they will also be tired out coming into this game, and we will have more rest coming into this game. So again, just like what I said with the FC Cincinnati game, a lot of things in that New England game in the next one points out that the Quakes should be able to get all 3 points on the road. And as for FC Cincinnati, yep, that's now 5 games without a goal, and obviously the frustration is starting to show in this team. Alan Koch, he made a very strange kind of comments talking about how, we have 3 D mid right now. We have so many D mid that we are trying to maybe play them out of the position and maybe push some of the D mid that are not really tends to like to attack, but we still will put them in the attacking end so that we can get some attacking force. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you decide to put some of your D mid that clearly are not attacking pieces, and you decided to put them as attacking pieces? And I believe they even put Alashe in as a wing in this game. And I don't recall one time when Alashe was with the Quakes, he was playing in the wing area. And Fernando Audi, after the game, he also has something to say, and he actually said the opposite of things of what Alan Koch kind of said, where he is absolutely frustrated the fact that this team has no identity, and that it seemed like this team is just playing players out of position, which I have to agree. This team is clearly playing players out of position. They clearly do not have an identity in this team, and it's no wonder why they can't score a goal right now, because they don't have an attacking piece. They don't have a creative player. They don't have a goal scored in this team. All they had is just a bunch of D mids that can they can definitely do a good job in terms of bunkering, but if you just bunker and you don't find a way to score goals, you are not going to win games. And that is what FC Cincinnati is struggling. And this is why this is a big summer for FC Cincinnati, because they have to get some players in the summer that is attacking piece player. We knew this was a problem coming into the season with them bringing so many D mids, that this would be a big problem going forward, where's the goals going to come. And Lord and behold, we're seeing that problem right now, where they bought too many D mids and that they're just nobody that they can basically use as an attacking player, and just there's no number 10 on this team. That's kind of the simple way of putting of the crisis that FC Cincinnati is in right now. But yeah, moving on into the next one. It's LAFC. So they drew 0-0 against the Chicago Fire, and the Chicago Fire did something that not a lot of team has done to LAFC, which is shut them out at Bank of California Stadium. I believe this is only like 3rd time ever that LAFC has been shut out at home, and I do not know how in the world LAFC did not score in this game. They had plenty of opportunity in this game. In fact, when you look at the shots in this game, they had 22 shots in this game compared to 9 that Chicago has. 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that Chicago has. 12 shots off target compared to 6 that Chicago has. 5 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that Chicago has. And they had 64% possession compared to 36% possession. So you would think that they would eventually score a goal, right? And it looked like they finally scored right about 23 minutes in, when there was like a bit of a scramble in the box. And somehow, in some way, Nemanja Nikolic basically clear off the line and keep this one at 0-0. And they also hit the post a couple of times. But what is even more kind of astonishing that Chicago was able to help LAFC at bay in terms of scoring is that they only had one natural center back in this game. They were once again playing Bastian Schweinsteiger as a center back, which we know how that worked out last season. And I thought for sure that Chicago was going to concede so many goals with the way that they don't have a natural center back, and that their defense is gonna, like, against this LAFC team, you would think that LAFC would just tick them apart, and yet somehow in some way they hold on. And a lot of that maybe has to do with LAFC kind of having one of those games where just nothing can go into the back of the net, and that's been kind of the story for LAFC the last couple of games. I mean, for the first couple of weeks of the season, they have just been kind of a goal-scoring juggernaut machine, scoring a bunch of goals, and kind of like being like the Atlanta United of last season. But lately, they have really struggled to score goals. And, I kind of said this with Seattle, and this is going to be the same thing with LAFC. I don't think they should really worry the fact that they are struggling to score goals, because they're still creating some decent chances, but it was just one of those days where nothing really goes right for them. And I think if they can continue to get those chances, and if they can continue to do what they do, then yeah, eventually they will once again find themselves in a goal-scoring kind of juggernaut like they were for the first couple of the season. And, the bottom line is, I think LAFC will be fine going forward. Their fans shouldn't be panicking the fact that they're kind of suffer a little bit down in form. As long as if they can continue to create those chances, they of course would eventually score those goals. But finally, moving on into the final game of this weekend is Atlanta. They got a very impressive win against SKC in this game when they won by a score of 3-0. And Ezekiel Barco, you remember how last year and in the beginning of this year I told you that Ezekiel Barco was a big bust for Atlanta last year because of the way that he performed, and that it feels like this was a huge waste of $15 million. And it feels like ever since when Barco came on against New England in that game, he has completely changed of how this Atlanta team is. He looked like he is really the guy that is kind of almost carrying this team on his back, and kind of a guy that you would say that, yeah, that's the $15 million that Atlanta paid him, and that's why they, of course, pay him, because he has that kind of quality. And in this game, he showed that quality again. Joseph Martinez, of course, scores the first goal, but Barco kind of was, even though he didn't get the assist, he kind of was part of the play where of course he was involved in terms of that play. So yeah, at that point it was 1-0 in favor of Atlanta, and then in the second half, Barco scores an absolute golazo. Who, I talked about how this could be the goal of the week with Rodon's goal against Minnesota. This could also be the goal of the week. I mean, that was an absolute golazo that Barco has. And the funny thing is, Barco had a lot of chance in this game, and he had a lot of beautiful kind of curling shot, beautiful shot going forward, and he could have maybe scored 2 or 3 goals in this game. But he did score that wonderful goal in the 47th minute, and in the 76th minute, it's him again that is involved in the attack. This time he did get the assist to Joseph Martinez, who basically puts it away. So it's good to see that, not only Barco is doing well, but also Joseph Martinez scoring goals again. I know that he's been really struggling this season in terms of that, but yeah, at the end of the day, it was a 3-0 win for Atlanta. And in terms of the shots in this game, 19 shots compared to 10 that SKC had, 8 shots on goal compared to 3 that SKC had, 7 shots off target compared to 5 that SKC has, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that SKC had, and Atlanta has 55% possession compared to 45% possession that Sporting KC has. And with this win, Atlanta have now won 3 out of 4 games, and I know it's still kind of a little bit early to say whether or not if Atlanta is back. I mean, I know they have now won 3 out of 4 games, but most of these games have been pretty easy until this one, where I thought it could potentially be a challenge. Although I think for Sporting KC, since they have just so many injury that they have to deal with, yeah, in some way maybe that kind of took a little bit shine off the fact that this was a victory that kind of sends a message to lead that, Atlanta is definitely back. But still, at the end of the day, it is still impressive, the fact that they are able to win on the road and to score 3 goals. I think that's the first time this season that they have been able to score 3 goals this season. And, you know, the only bad news I think for Atlanta coming out of this game is probably with the fact that, you know, Ezequiel Barco having an amazing game. Yeah, he's going to be off to the U20 World Cup with Argentina, which means that he will not be available for this team. And as I mentioned, Barco, for the last couple of weeks, he has been the spark plug of this Atlanta revival that they kind of struggle in the beginning of the season. And now, without him, yeah, that's what I am kind of concerned with Atlanta. And this is where I think Pity Martinez got to step up. And for the second game in a row, Pity Martinez, he didn't had a very good game. He was subbed out early, and when he was walking to the bench, you know, obviously he was once again very disappointed. Although this time he did shake the hands of some of the assistants on the bench, and he didn't really kick off the chair because of the fact that he's frustrated. But you can see that he is very frustrated, and almost as if I feel like Pity Martinez this season was the Ezequiel Barco of last year. Last year, Barco wasn't really producing anything, and it turns out he was a big bust, and then the very next year, he started to produce. So, as long as if Pity Martinez can, like, I don't want to say Pity Martinez need to follow the same approach that Barco do, which is start performing next year. You know, if he can start to figure it out, and they really need him to figure it out, as I mentioned, with Barco going to the U20 World Cup, then I think Atlanta would be fine. Otherwise, I do have some concern with the fact that, you know, without Barco in this team, how in the world is this team going to go for in the future? But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for all the review of this match week. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.